these thoughts the first time I held my daughter. It was like, I don't know that I've ever recovered from the minute that I think I was still in the shock of that, but I was just like, I held her. I don't know. It's wild because I was telling someone be my therapist. But I was like, yeah, I held my daughter and I was like, no one's ever going to hurt you. Like, I'm never going to let anyone anywhere near you, like no one's ever going to, you're never going to know the wild, gnarly stuff of this world. And I've had several people be like, yo, that's not what I thought. Like, but it's interesting because I think we all have our own, relationship to it. I think for me, it gave me a lot of purpose. And every minute of your day, let me say, like, thanks for making time to talk. Like, I have such a great affection for you and such a champion in my mind, for your creativity and humility and and yeah, to get together and have fellowship with people, groups of people, different people, meet new people. It means something different when you have a child, and every moment all of a sudden means something different. You owe your entire life to this person, and like it's like a whole new thing, and everything else that you're doing shares space with this big dynamic thing in your life. So congratulations, by the way.
Thank you, man. Yeah,
I'm sure you guys are crushing it.
It's, I think I felt the same way you did. I mean, as soon as he was here and I'm holding him, it was like this, like an avalanche or something of emotion that you feel. I felt this conflicting idea when I was driving him home from the hospital. And I kind of referenced this actually in the last collection that I did, and then the one that I'm working on now. It was both of these feelings that was like, I have to protect you and I want to protect you, but at the same time, being a dad, I have to, I brought you into this world and I have to let you discover it for yourself. And isn't that just such an interesting, like, paradox of ideas, right? I mean, it's just, it's up to us right now to protect, but at the same time, we have to let go. There's a bit of a mourning feeling with this, like, immense pride and joy.
Yeah, I have a huge mourning I have a gigantic cloud of melancholia, like, that follows me around, and part of it, but the joy part is, you're giving your life has a different meaning now, so I was like, man, like, by the way, let's also address the fact that a lot of people don't decide not to be parents, and I respect that. And I think that, I've talked to friends of mine that don't feel, that led to be parents, and I respect that. And I don't think, being a parent, I just want to say this to hold space for that conversation. Like, I think, but for me, because of my personal experience, I felt like a great importance on doing this, and like also to show someone creativity, like, to show my daughter. I walked around the house from birth, and like we have all these photographs and paintings and stuff from friends and different people that make stuff, and she's known from before, like from the from her beginning, like art is important. I say to her, like, it probably sounds so goofy, but like I would say like art is important. Like she would, little kids like smack things, and I would say like art is important. Like art is so important, and she knows from the beginning of this whole thing, like art is like, and all the different forms of art are so important to us, and like that's our religion, and like to have a young person, and I see a lot of creatives raise their children, and I just think like it's so cool to have a person, because I didn't have that, like art was like
yeah,
not it,
and I'd want to jump back to that eventually, but I think it's so true what you're saying, and it's also, I think, to some degree creativity is innate in us, right? I think we're creative beings. I think part of our culture and world, actually teaches us to not be creative, right? And so if you have creative parents, I think there's a certain amount of it that is really just letting the creativity flourish and trying to create an environment around it, as opposed to what it's normally about in our world now, right? Which is following kind of rules and regulations and, obey the teacher and stand in line and color in between the lines. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of stuff, I just think importance, in our house and with my daughter, my family, my siblings, like all of us, we decided pretty young, like, by the way, I like love the people that help me do my taxes and all the different things that are necessary in the world. But I think that sometimes art, and I think the thing that by the way, thank you for asking me to do this with you. We didn't, just for anybody that witnesses this, I don't know how this is gonna be edited or whatever, but we didn't talk about anything. You were just like, let's talk. But yeah, I think that I think that there's hierarchies. What I'd really like to talk to you about, because I think that we've never really discussed this, but I'm just a fan of you. The byproduct of your art is the art itself, like the thing, the tangible thing, or the thing we can see. But I think that your what approach to things is like fits exactly what I'm about to say. Like everybody that does anything that contributes to society, like there's hierarchies given to things, and obviously like when it's time to eat, the person that got the food it's like yo thank you person, and if it's time to do this, if it's time to go to war, you're like this person protects us, and it's time to be warm, the person that started the fire and the person that makes the clothes. But I think these hierarchies are super confusing because there's certain things that we don't really like make time, like people don't really make time for, and then when you make art, it's like you always work with a lot of artists in music, and people always talk about meeting someone and dating them and meeting their family, and the family being like, what do you do? And the person's like, I'm a DJ, I'm in a band, I'm a producer. And it's like, have you done anything that I would know? Because it's like literally in real time, the person's saying like, should I, like, I don't think even people even mean to be like this, but they're like, would you do anything I know of, And it's like, if you're like, oh, I produced this song and I'm in Coldplay or whatever, a band that everybody knows of, AC/DC or whatever it is. Like, if you're in a band that everybody knows of, then the person that they're talking to is like, oh, wow, But if you're just this, and it's this interesting hierarchy with like art and creativity and so many things. I work on a TV show, like, oh yeah, what is it? It's like, then it's like this interesting thing that like the doing of the thing to me is just as important as the success of the thing, because they're not mutually exclusive, or maybe I'm using the phrase wrong, but I just think that I'm trying to seem smarter than I am, but I just think that The thing is like, if you're like, I'm a SEAL. I've always thought that, like, I always heard these things as a little kid, like, if you want to be a Navy SEAL, you got to do this, and it's like, and everyone would be like, oh, you're a Green Beret, you're a SEAL, like, whoa, and it's like, but it's like, for you make stuff, you make really cool stuff, and I'm sure, and let me say, I'm just gonna throughout this thing just kind of worship you a little bit, but like, there's people out there that I meet, and they're like, I paint, or I do this, or I make music, and when you're talking about, oh, well, what is it, there's no kind of like stickiness around it. There's no kind of like, it's not like they feel like they have to prove, or they feel like less, or they feel like more. And it's like, the thing I would love to see, and the thing that I really try to encourage, and the reason that I do all kinds of projects, some visible and some maybe not, is because I just want everybody in the space to realize that they're the only difference between one person and another person is, like, maybe they did it a little bit longer than you, or maybe they did something, there's definitely none of us are going to have the same story. None of us are going to have, and I really think that, like, in the world of creatives, and as you become a bigger and bigger recognized figure, I just really appreciate your candor and your disposition. And I'm like, man, if that person could just, if that was a voice that a lot of more people could hear, it would feel good,
Yeah. Thank you, Josh. I think it's one of the reasons I wanted to start this project, because, I really just feel like a sponge. I mean, I feel like I'm kind of like 2% into this journey, and there's so much there's so much to learn from so many different creatives. And it's really why I reached out to you, first, really, because, you've been around so much. I mean, more than most people would in their lifetime, especially when it comes to, creativity. And I think we can talk about all these things, alt press and, the record label, and just, kind of like growing up around, your friends and family who are really doing things. But there's so much to be learned from other people, and I think it's why I do what I do, and why I wanted to start this is because, I see myself more as a servant, I guess. I'm risking kind of sounding, pious or something saying this, but I see myself more of a creative servant, as kind of instead of being a leader in the space, I guess. You know what I mean? I really I'm here to serve, and whether that's like, through inspiring conversations like you and I right now, or whether that's through my work in fashion or whatever it is that I do next, I really see it as a service to humanity. And I don't really know if I'd want to operate a different way. I don't know if we need more like things, or more, more brands, or more like, t-shirts or anything, but I think the story is so important, right? And this is kind of a medium that we can share stories together, and inspire, the next generation of creatives.
I think that I've been super fortunate in to be sort of have this like interesting situation where I've met a lot of people before a lot of people knew who they were, and I've worked around a lot of people who work around that, and I think the real thing that I kind of like got in touch with is that, like, first of all, you have to, well, some people are gifted, like, in interesting way because they're enigmatic, or they have like this charisma, or they have this like soul, this thing that draws people in. And then I think when you meet the people and you see their work and you meet them, and you know, after meeting so many, you're just like, oh, whoa, people are gonna love this person, you know? And then the other part of it is also if they're able to deal with the negotiation of that, you know, and how they receive that kind of like attention, support, whatever you want to call it, interest. And it's interesting because the other part for me at a pretty young age was, I was like, what does this mean about me? Like, I'm not in a band. I'm not, you know, I'm not this, I'm not that. And I think I hit this place where I was like, oh wow, there's like a community of people that are just like creative souls or whatever, you know, whatever the phrase would be. And I think the bigger kind of like thing for me was like, oh whoa, like I just want to connect as many that should be connected, and some maybe shouldn't or whatever. But like ultimately, when I hit this place where I was like, it doesn't mean anything. Like if I meet someone who nobody knows, and then 3 years later there's doing the biggest thing in the world, it doesn't mean anything about should I be in their place, or what does it mean do I get a finder's fee? There's all these conversations around like creativity. Am I signing them? Am I like, in what way am I involved? And honestly, not to sound goofy, but like a lot of times I'm not involved. I didn't find them. They showed up, you know. If I am trying to like negotiate with the world, financially and otherwise, what my place is around something, I'm really gonna miss the real wild alchemy of like just being like, oh dude, you know who you should meet. And the universe, and this is gonna sound, you know, whatever, you know, the universe, there's a couple of signals that I get, and it's, you know, forgive me, but there's things that I see, there's pattern recognition for me. And but by the way, again, I saw when I met you, and then I ran into you thrifting. This is gonna sound super lame, but so many people I meet. So you meet someone, and then you run into them in a space that it's like seeing someone in a band and play music, and then running into them in a humble arena, right? Maybe they're waiting tables, maybe they're washing cars or painting or doing a job, and then you're like, hey, are you so and so from that band? And they're like, you can tell, like, you know, I so many people. If I told you how many people I've I met and I ran into them thrifting or doing any of the little, you know, things that I do. And it's interesting because I will tell you, like, so many people that you would be like, wow, like, and it's the universe, like, it's just this weird thing where it's like, I think that I had this really odd placement growing up in this 12 by 10 room with these two other guys that were my little brothers, that from the very beginning I was like, y'all are like touched, you know? And then I met more and more people, and I was like, you're and all these people, if I told you like each person, it's like, and the thing I really had to do early on was like negotiate with myself. What does it mean that you met them? Because if you don't, you know, some people, no one's ever going to know. You don't get any kind of points. It's just this weird thing. Life shows you these things, and then you can help it. You know, you can put them together, you can be there. But I really thought, and I still do think today, my sort of takeaway from all of it is like the moment. I could tell you like hours of stories that you're like, no way, you know? And it's like, for me, I really think the takeaway is like the stories of like the moments of my life where I'm like, I can't believe I lived this movie. And during the pandemic, I'll end my diatribe. I'm sorry, my mind is a rundown sentence, but during the pandemic, I saw Slumdog Millionaire for the first time. And dude, I don't want to cry. I like cried because I was like, I've never identified with anything more because of the wild life that I lived. I can't believe I'm definitely I outlived my expiration date. I'm 46. I've lived past my life expectancy I expected to end 20 years ago. I lived all this crazy stuff that's like straight out of, sometimes it's like Boys in the Hood, sometimes it's like Almost Famous, but it's like uh I just really at the end of it, I mean this isn't the end of it I hope, but to work to like more of these days I'm just like, man, maybe my place in all this is just to like have the stories and know when I meet someone that's gifted or like special or like, I mean everyone's special, but like my place is to be like, hey, yo, like when I met you, I never had a question. Nothing that ever happens with you, or from you is ever going to surprise me. From the minute I met you, I was like, nothing that guy does is going to surprise me. No, call it CFDA, call it a Grammy, call it like Billy Walsh, right? Billy Walsh, who I love with my whole heart, just like you. I'm not claiming that it's my best friend or anything. From the minute I met the guy, I was like, yo, this guy's gonna be good. And you can't take ownership of like his story or what was gonna happen. There's so many people. That's just a random name of like. There's so many people that the universe put in my path, and I was like, I don't know. Maybe my purpose in this life is just to be like someone along the way that's like, hey, you're a superstar,
Yeah.
and like, but you're like that. The minute I met you, I was like, dude, that. If you're in a movie next year with Brad Pitt and um, uh, John Cusack, I'll be like, yeah, for sure. I would not be surprised. I would just be like, yeah, the universe and the people that whoever saw the same thing I saw, and in probably you probably had a. The thing I think is interesting is like who in your life when you are like Joel always has this thing. I'm just a gigantic fan of my brother Joel. He's like it's interesting because like who gave you permission to be a fashion designer? Who gave you? I saw him talking to this really successful rapper one time. We were just the three of us were sitting and the person was like kind of pondering some stuff and going through it. And Joel was like, yeah, like who gave you permission to be a rapper? And the guy was like raised up. He was like, what you talking about? And the guy was like not happy with what Joel said. But he was like, no, I mean like, who gave you permission? And it flips it like, who gave any of us permission to do any of what we're doing? And it's like, I wonder when I look at people like you, because you have a confident, ego-free humility. And I'm like, man, who showed that guy? Who showed that person? Because I didn't have that. I had to like find it, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not saying I have it now, but you have this like real comforting. You're like the quarterback that like is like, hey man, come play football with us. As opposed to you can't sit with us. You're like the guy that's like, hey man, check this out. You make everybody feel like they belong in the thing, and it's like, man, I look at people like you and I'm like, what, your parents still married, or like what did you have, like a really cool art teacher in high school, or what did you have that, because you sort of got it figured out, it seems.
I have an interesting background. None of my family are artists or musicians or anything. I come from a pretty, I'd say mostly blue collar background.
Same,
my mom,
same.
my mom, she started as a preschool teacher, and, she, after she was home with my sister and I, she became a real estate agent and now is doing some real estate developing. My dad, my dad was a pastor, a minister, but worked with a lot of nonprofits around the world. So he would help, he'd help different organizations raise money. And my uncle did, a similar thing. And so I went to Peru with my uncle when I was like in the second grade. My dad took me to Calcutta, India when I was, 13, 14 years old as a freshman in high school. And so, I hit the lottery as far as it comes with, family and being just born in America to start, right? But I had an interesting experience where, even though I kind of hit the family lottery, I was exposed to a lot of the, not so much, I don't know if darker is the word, but a lot of the parts of humanity people don't want to know exists, So like my dad would take me to the hospital and visit people who were on their deathbed, and try to comfort them. And then, when I was in India and I ended up living there for a couple of months when I was in college, but, I worked feeding lines. I volunteered at like, homes of people who were dying. So I've had this like mix of experiences that I think showed me kind of what the world is really like. And I think that's part of it. I mean, it's difficult to self-analyze, right? And kind of realize where that comes from. But I think because I was exposed to that, I have something you mentioned at the beginning, kind of this melancholic, almost somber view of the world, and there are a lot of things that need fixing and all that. And generally I feel like an optimist. I think as artists and creatives, there's a certain amount of that, right, that we need to have. But I think those early experiences really kind of formed me as a person. And kind of realizing that the world really doesn't revolve around me. At the same time, I had a mom and a dad that really believed in me and kind of told me like, what do you want to do? Like you can pursue that. And so I think it's that amalgamation really that kind of, I recognize that, and I use that as fuel really to kind of pursue what I'm doing now. But, thank you for your words, by the way. And I really felt, I'm interested in your intuition you have, that you kind of mentioned in your, just a minute ago, because, one of the things you said to me when we first met, you were like, I don't really do this often, but here's my number. We really need to, we need to stay connected. I mean, what is it? And maybe when was the first moment you realized that this was an intuition you had, to really, part of being a creative is, and, being inspiring to other creatives is creating that environment, right? So you said, well, I didn't really do much, but I think what you did do is you created an environment, right? For people to come together. And so I'm curious, when you feel like that sense of intuition, is there a moment for you that you think about?
I'm seeing things like years ahead, right? Which is really weird, and it sounds really goofy to say, and I've just made peace with it, because for a long time when I was young it's hard to put into words still. I think there's people that I've heard talk that really have it a little more figured out, and they definitely have a little bit of a better relationship with it. For me, I have to say, and I think the most important thing to say is like, because I want people to understand okay, so you're the lead singer of what you're doing. You know, you're a benevolent, friendly, ego-free, as far as I've experienced, humble, person, and you're the lead singer. And it's like, in order for something to be successful, everyone has to realize that like the lead singer is one part of it, and then this part is one part of it, and that part's one part of it, and everybody has to sort of understand there's another part of it that, like, in the beginning, when you meet someone, there was a time in my life where I was like, do I need to grab on to things to be part of it? Like there was a time in my life where I was like, maybe I should, manage people. And I don't, and genuinely, I don't manage anybody. We have a company that manages people. I do I'm a helper, but, it's really interesting because there was a time in my life where I was like, there was a period in my life where I would have been like, let me introduce you to this person and they're going to invest in your thing and then we'll do it like that. And it's like, and I really, by the time certain things happened in my life, I really had to like let go of that, because there's all these things that like would block me up. Like if I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to sign the band that I just saw that I like, and I'm less concerned with just being a helper and a assistant, a force of good, a cheerleader, whatever the universe is going to have me be around that band or that artist or that photographer or that whatever I can be. I just know when I meet creatives, I'm like, yo, and I meet, Lawrence Video. There's this person. I just want to say a bunch of names because there's a bunch of people like, I think Lawrence Video is like, I think to me, I see her and I'm like, you're like headed to Tina Fey land, and I see people and I'm just like, don't, just hang in there, like it's gonna happen, and there's a period in my life where I was like, how do I, I would see it and I felt like I needed to like be like, I don't mean attached to it. I didn't have dirty, gnarly things around it. I just was like, oh man, this is so special. And there were so many bands and so many different things that I got to see first. And I think I keep feeling like I want to cry. This is like, I don't talk about this stuff, but the universe was like, it was like this weird voice that's just there. That's like, like, don't, it's like you get to see this and this is a special moment you're never going to forget. And like, if you want to be part of it, just help however you can be of service. Like you said, like being of service. And I feel like even to now what I'm doing, whether it's, there's a bunch of magazines. Since we last spoke, there's like 6 magazines. And my position is whatever people tell me my position is. It's a very interesting, and let me say, like, knowing of people like you and knowing of certain other people and their position and the way that they've done life. And I'm not perfect, man. My wife and daughter will tell you, man, I got a long way to go and I got a lot of work to do. But in this world of creativity, I feel really happy right now of this thing, because I really do genuinely feel like I could be working on a music video that's like $100,000 and the next day be doing something that I'm spending money on. And it's only by the force of whatever this bigger thing is that I am even in the room with the things that I'm in the room with. And a couple of years ago, I don't know. I don't even want to tell stories because it's just distracting. I think that's another thing that's a little weird is like, if you start saying names or start saying things, it just gets a little distracting. And it's like, I don't really care about being ever recognized. I'd rather actually, I moved. So you don't know this, but I wanted to wait to tell you, I live in Tennessee. I live in not in Nashville. I live out in Tennessee, and I'm still as involved in every single thing as I've ever been involved in. I do have a little bit more of my brain back. I can't like, it's been really good because I think would just go every night to everything and do everything and be part of everything and just give everything. And I think coming here was a part of this, is like to move and do and start and do it again in a new place, which I already am, working with artists and like doing stuff, and working on the stuff we're working on. But yeah, your question is like, there's like this thing, I don't know, man. It's like if I said, if I said, do you like strawberries or blueberries? And you just know, like that, you just know things. If I was like, do you like Dr. Pepper or Sprite? You would know, like, you would just be like, without a shadow of a doubt certain things. And I was really, really fortunate to like see some things really early. And then I think I don't know, I did a lot of drugs, and then I didn't, and I don't do a lot of drugs anymore. But I was in the room with I've been in the room and seen a lot of stuff just like right in front of my eyes. And I think it's like okay, so there's PTSD, which is like, and I don't know if everybody we throw around phrases like anxiety attack or PTSD, or, we throw around a lot of things, and I'm glad that we're all aware of them. But I think like PTSD is like when a moment happens in your life and you think it's happening 20 years later, right? So I deal with that and Arrested Development and all this stuff. I'm pretty transparent about everything. But I also, the same way that I have PTSD, where like, and I'm working on it, there's this weird thing, like when I get a feeling, I'm just like, I just know that's one, and again, like off, I'd like to talk to you about it just sometime. That's just because you're one of these people. And when you win and seeing you win, I celebrate you, because when I also run the risk, like I don't know you as well as I don't know you in the physical sense as well as I feel like I know you in the ethereal sense, right?
Right.
So I'll tell you stuff, like I'll talk about your stuff like we work together. And I have to like sometimes pull back, because I see someone like I said, like Lawrence or Video or certain people, where I'm like, you're fucking amazing. And I'll talk to someone that I know from the internet or someone that I meet 2 times. Chappelle Lacey does comedy, and I'm just like, you're one, and we've eaten a taco together once, but it's like, I don't have I just know, and I feel like it's my Brett Westfall, like when I meet someone and I sit in their presence and I like look in their eyes and I like just feel that, I'm just like, you're one, and it's up to them. Here's another thing. I'm not invested. If you decided today to do something that wasn't good by society standards, that happens sometimes. People like, people do stuff. And I think another thing that happens with creatives is like, people feel like there's some kind of like ownership with the creative. Like everybody's so disappointed that like this artist like overdosed, or this person did this thing or did this thing. And it's like, dude, I have no ownership of anything anybody does, good, bad, or otherwise. And I'm not disappointed. I had to really get past that. So I saw this kid and he was the best guitar player I've ever seen. I saw this girl, she had the best natural voice I've ever seen. And then 5 years later, and it's like, I don't judge people. I don't judge.
We can separate the work from the person. I think that's really important.
100%. I also think that like if we did it more as a society, if we didn't, like, you're in the room with people, and again, I'm not, but like at the end of the day, if someone can be in the room with you and feel that you're the same, right? You could win the CFDA award and have and you could be appointed to be the creative director of the Moon, and you can do all this stuff. And if we get in the room together and have an iced tea and you feel like something's changed between us, it's lonely for you. And I do, with respect to artists, I do think that like it does change, things do change in the spectrum of culture, in the spectrum of like, you know, once you win like 7 Academy Awards or 15 Grammys, it is distracting in our human form, in our human, you're like, if you become, you know, you win Miss America or do whatever, like it can get distracting because there's these titles that the world gives. But like the most important thing that I think we can do for people is like allow them their humanity, you know? And sometimes people get trained by us that they're different, you know, and they react different, and then we're all like, why are they acting different? It's like we treated them different, you know? So it's like the best thing we can do. And I work with a lot of artists, I don't even know if I'd say I work with them. I talk to a lot of artists, and the best thing I can give them is their humanity. And also, not if they come in one day and they're acting different, you know, they just got off tour, and you know, it's like, oh, don't judge them, like talk about it, work through it, and get them back their humanity. And like, yes, it's a hard thing to negotiate. I look at Uzi Vert a lot. I'm gonna say his name. I don't know him. I love him so much. Like, I don't even listen to his music. I'm just saying as a person. I got a great love for certain people because you see them going through life, and I can't speak. I don't know his personal life, whatever. But I look at people that like are thrust into this realm of like, you know, and it's weird. Let me say this too. Celebrity is a good word. If you become a celebrity in the creative world, that means we're celebrating what you do. Celebrity, we celebrate you. We celebrate your work. We celebrate. I think celebrity is such a nasty, bad word when it's like, you know, when a name designer came and you told me that they bought your clothes, you know, at another store, and then they came the next day wearing them and hung out with you. I have told that story at least 100 times, no less than 100 times. There's this guy. You should look him up. They don't know who you are. They don't know what it is. Non-fashion related people, music people. And I tell them the story that this designer, and then the designer went to the store and bought his clothing at another store, and then came to the store that he was humbly working at, in his clothing, and hung out with him. Dude, that is as good as Michael Jordan spoke at my basketball camp and then we played together in the NBA, right? It's a very special moment where we realize humanity. And to the Uzi Vert thing, let me just say this because I think we should talk about this with a lot of people. I don't think that when you're born and you're given talent and it's matched with opportunity / hustle and, you know, whatever else, there's no handbook that goes, okay, Drew, you're going to design this line. You're going to win this award. You're going to be in every magazine, and then you're going to make a song, and then that's going to be on the top of the charts, and then you're going to be in a movie, and you're going to win an Oscar. There's no book that comes with any of that stuff. And I think for anybody who's been through it before, I think a lot of people, it's like weird because it's like, I don't want to co-op. When I said, I don't do this a lot, but here's my number, I just was like, you know, if this guy ever needs me, I'm going to avail myself, or I'm going to try to connect him to someone else that can help, you know? And it's like, I don't know, like I now at this point, like 20, you know, I don't know, when Benjamin and Joel got signed, I was like, not surprised. Nothing they've ever done, nothing that's ever happened with Benjamin and Joel's ever surprised me. My wife is a superstar. Nothing that is going on with her surprises me. There's certain people that I'm just seeing, and you're like, you know, you're just like, Yeah, it's going to be good. All they have to do is stay alive. That's on them. All they have to do is stay alive, not get themselves in trouble, physical, mental, or otherwise, if they can, not. But it's like, and my position and my responsibility, I feel like in life is just to be like, help it however I can. And I don't know.
Yeah.
At this point, I don't know, like, I don't know. It's a feeling and it's never been wrong.
What's the through line that you notice from, because, yeah, I mean, you touched on so many points we can go into. What's the through line between the creatives that really find success? And of course, we have to be, always careful with that word, right? Because success is, part of success is like what you said, that tenacity of just like not, just holding on and keeping going. I think that's something a lot of creatives should talk more about. I mean, for me, I'm 30, but I started
so young.
I started making clothes at 18, so I paid money out of my own pocket for, 10 years, not even knowing what I was doing. I basically decided that I was going to do this as long as I needed to. And it's interesting that things started to change for me when I let go of the success portion early on, because I had two parents that were, more entrepreneurial. I kind of was like, okay, I know I'm going to do something great. And I think in a naive way, I wanted it to be great right away. I've had to fight through perfectionism, my whole life. I always wanted to be, when I played basketball, I wanted to be the best. When I did that, I wanted to be the best. And then same with clothing. When I, with making pieces, I wanted to be like the best right away. I wanted to put my best work out. And I think the benefit of that is that I pursued it right away. I mean, I took meetings in New York and I would like fly and just be there for the day. And like I was doing whatever it took to make it happen. But as soon as I let go of that, that's when I think that's when I was able to, I guess, in an art way, speak from what was really deep inside. I was no longer making things that I thought people wanted. I started making it for myself, but it really took 10 years. But to go back to the question, I mean, because you've been around it, nearly your whole life, what's the through line between, the people who make it and the people who just don't, maybe they don't have what it takes. Maybe they, like you said, they just don't, they pass, or they get themselves into trouble, or if there's one or two things that you see are the through lines, what are those couple things?
Action on intuition. If you can have clarity with your intuition. I'm convinced of this. So don't let me make any absolutes. I believe that if you can, that's the reason that I think it's like so important to like get to your, I was telling someone the other day, an artist I love, super successful. I love him so much. And I was like, they went to this session and they were like talking about their personal experience and the anxiety and all this stuff that was kind of manufactured anxiety. And I was like, oh, I wouldn't go there anymore, because your clarity is your A1. You're going to write a better song. You're going to be, calmness, and your clarity, all that stuff is going to create a better byproduct. And I was like, I told this person, I was like, every great song you're ever going to write is already in you. It's already there. Like, if you see a sunset and you write about it, yes, you saw the sunset and you wrote about it, and you only saw it on that Tuesday, but it's already, all your facilities are already there. Like every great collection, you already know that you can make every great thing. And it's all for me, and this is my thing. And it's like when people do things that are I don't know Drake. I think Drake, the magnitude of Drake, the reason I use this example is the magnitude of Drake has like touched all of our lives in some way, right? We're all living in some way. You'd be pressed to go somewhere and meet someone, at least in this country and largely the world, that doesn't know Drake. When I saw that Drake got a plane and they did the clouds painting on it, I was like, yeah, like you're going to like, okay, one of a couple things is gonna happen. You're either gonna you put it into the world that you need a plane. You're gonna either work so much that you use that plane so much, or you're gonna sell that plane. It's like some kind of stunt and whatever. But like, I don't think that's what that was. And whenever I see it, I don't follow him closely. But whenever I see it, I'm like, yo, good to go. Good for you, man. I don't know him. I don't know much about him. All I know is that like when I see people, the kid who delivers pizzas, and this is just age old. I don't know if kids deliver pizzas anymore, but the person that does the thing, and every movie is about this. I deliver pizzas in this car that I'm working on because I want to go race at the racetrack. And it's like, you're going to do it. Like, I saved up all my money to buy this camera. It's like, I think the thing we have to really realize is that I met a lot of people in the creative world, and maybe this will help someone else. I was like it's like, I think there's a children's book where the little animal is looking for the mom, and it's like, are you my mommy? I was in the creative world, and I was like, I met Marvin really early. I've known him for years, and he had started Ray Gun, he did Nylon, he did all this stuff. And I was like, am I supposed to be you? Then I met different people. I worked at Epic Records, and I was around the president of the label and around, Pete Jaberga, right? This guy, Pete Jaberga, who was like kind of a hero to, came from hardcore and went on to work in making big records at big labels. And when I met Pete Jaberga, I was like, am I supposed to be you? I like a world where everybody can see themselves. If you could look to a world in music or in fashion or in culinary arts or anywhere, writers, photographers, everybody, if someone had someone to look up to and see a bit of themselves and really, in a perfect world, connect with them a bit, I think that would be really awesome. I think that would be really, really awesome.
And I think that's part of our story, right, as creators, is that there's parts of our life that we're putting down, right? And part of that story is connecting with, in a way, the you that is out there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, man. I'm so detached. And
it's part of the reason why I wanted to do this, because I, not coming from an art background, not even knowing about, what high fashion was until I was like 21, I would have loved to listen to this, and instead of, over the last 8 months, I've been like, what is out there? Well, there's nothing really out there. And then just kind of deciding like, I need to make that for myself, so a lot of this is selfish for me, is getting to.
Yeah. Well, sorry to interrupt, but you should also like, okay, so I talk about Marvin because I went to fashion shows with Marvin and dinners, and he took me everywhere. I'm so grateful that the universe put this person in my life. By the way, he's a dude. He's just a person. He's another human. He's very like open about that. He's just like, he doesn't think he's, he's been a real example for me in a lot of ways, but he would take me to shows, and I remember time after time they would say, oh, here. And then he would be like, he's with me, you know? And then they would say, like, they'd point to the seat behind, and he'd be like, no, just sit right here. And he said, and I was like, no, I can sit, you know? And there's someone just trying to do their job. I'm not, you know, they have a mic on and they're trying to get as many people in the front row. You know, I know what that looks like. But he was like, no, sit next to me. And then through the show and after the show, he would be like, you know, I would be like, man, that's, and I had a dialogue with someone who knew more than me about things, what I thought about things. And there were times when I was way off, you know? I was like, I was like telling him one time about award shows, and I was like, I don't watch big award shows, you know? I'm like living in the Lower East Side. I'm like, man, that's,
yeah, exactly.
That's whack. I don't watch award shows. And he was like, I think you should. Because if you want to make media and you want to talk to the world, you have to know what the world's doing. And I was like, he blew my mind. I thought he was like the coolest guy that ever, you know, walked the earth. And you know, and he really like said things to me. And he took me to dinner with MIA before anybody knew who MIA was. He was like, you want to go to this dinner? It was like me and Marvin and MIA. Like so many, I don't mean to say names, but so many times like that, my people in my life took me along, and I saw and heard things firsthand that carved out this like understanding of like what the artist, you know, listen to the artist and assist the artist and kind of, you know, and also when the artist says they don't want something, you know, maybe find out why, and maybe help make it easier for them, or maybe say, yeah, no, you shouldn't do this. But I think, you know, people like that created a space for me, and I think, you know, and also I have a lot of privilege. Let's just say that both of us are sitting here together. We should say we have a lot of privilege. But I do find in my life, and I hope anybody that I am around knows that the biggest place in my heart is about doing that. Once that was done for me, and it left such a huge impression, that all I want to do is protect creative people, like, you know, cheer them on, and make the biggest, safest playground, help them heal. You know, I've been through a lot of healing, and I think I have a lot more to go, but help them heal. And you know, I have spent a lot of my life disassociating, and I try to use my weakness for good now. Like, I don't know about myself as far as like what anyone thinks, or what, you know, sometimes every once in a while I'll be like, you just posted that. You seem so geeky or such a dork. But I'm like, the minute I get that feeling, the same feeling, the universe has kind of spoken to me in this weird way where it's like, I don't look in the mirror too long. I have shirts that I like or whatever, a hat that I like or whatever, but I'm just saying I don't look in the mirror too long, because I really think that if I think too much about the case of this soul, that I just want the soul to be out there all the way. I want the soul to lead. I can't think about what I think about my nose or my whatever it is. And I would just encourage anybody that, like, the more you can get out of the way of your soul and let your soul do what it needs to do, you can you can find, we're just souls, you know. And I'm borrowing from Ram Dass, because I found a lot of safety in thinking like that.
I'm sure music would have something similar, right? In like a note, or like, you know, a chord, or like a way that you play chords that kind of share a feeling that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Well, so I'm like legally, I don't think I'm legally deaf. I think I'm legally deaf in my right ear. I've had bad hearing my whole life. From a very young age, I've had really bad hearing. But I think it's really wild. To the conversation of that blue, which I knew, like it feels, the stuff that you're making does feel scanned. It feels like when people do handset type, the only way that handset type looks like handset type is if you do it, and then you can either do it good or you can do it bad, you know? And we can't really, I mean, Amy went to Art Center, so she could probably tell you why handset type looks good or bad, but I can't. I do it a lot. I use handset type a lot just on Instagram stories or whatever, because I feel like it's, you know, but I think looking at that blue, or like hearing a song, you're right. It's interesting because it's like, it communicates different things to us, you know, like it's pretty wild to think that there's a blue that we all agree on that's really, really a good looking color, you know, because we're all seeing like our own version of it, you know. It's the same thing with music, you know, and I think that's what your point might have been. It's like, it's pretty interesting that like we all agree on something, you know, like Mr. Brightside or whatever, you know, like it's just like we all collectively agree on a song or a color or a something, and it's like, that to me is like so incredible, because, you know, especially if you're not like, I don't see your work with anyone else. I don't see it in a place in physical, like I'm far away from all of that stuff, and it still affects me. So it's like, it's interesting. It's the same thing with music. Like finding a record or finding a song that no one put me on to that. I found it, and then having your own relationship with things is really, I think, super special, you know, which, I mean, that's a really interesting conversation for me, because it's like, how much of what we do is like, do we have a real relationship with, and how much of, you know, like how much of it is like impressed upon us, you know?
Yeah. What is your opinion on that? How much is impressed upon us, you think?
A lot, you know, and I definitely do my best to veer away from, you know, angry old man yells at cloud or whatever that is, you know, like working with younger people, which I thoroughly enjoy, and seeing influence on so much. I definitely don't want to be like, yeah, man, I have so many internal conversations about all this stuff. It's so wild. Had this thought this week about styling, you know, before, and I want to tread lightly, because I think the fashion community and creative people are going to listen to you know, I think largely. So I definitely want to be reverent when talking about things, but like, how much of what we're doing when we're quote unquote styling people or working on creative is like from us or something we think is cool, and how much of it is just like an easy solution to like something we know people are going to like, you know? I'm trying to say that nice, like, you've worked in, and I think I was reading the interview that Chris Black did with Luke from, Luke is like a friend and acquaintance for quite a while, probably 7 or 8 years. And he has a store in New York City, which is reselling high end stuff. And, you know, try to stay on track. I think that so much of what is going on right now is like, we can't help but be like largely influenced in you know, and that's why I have a lot of books. I don't know if I have a lot. I think there are a lot, but I have books, and I like sometimes will put on a vinyl record, you know, to force myself to listen to, you know, to just be like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I try to get into this space, like kind of like the space that I grew up in. And then I look at books, and I'll just like open up a book and look through, and then I'll stop on something, and then it'll remind me of something in another book, you know? And then I pull out another book, and I try to go on these journeys that are like not unlike what we do on Instagram or Tumblr or whatever is happening any given period of time. But I think that like I think that so much of what we're doing is referential, and it's tough because to be successful, if you reference things that like a lot of people can relate to, you'll have success because everyone can relate to it. And if you write a song or if you make a hoodie or if you do something, if a lot of people can relate to it, then you have success because people can relate to it like that, and so there's no reason for us to like poo-poo that or anything. But I think the other thing that you can do, and the thing that my favorite creative people do, is like take me on a journey to a place that I can't already relate to. A big part of the reason that I moved, that I left everything, was because I was just like I wanted to go into a room of 300 people that I didn't know anybody and hear music that I didn't already know, and like I just wanted to get lost again. And I think it's like a lot of what we're doing is referential to what we all can relate to, because I don't know, maybe people are comfortable with that. I'm not. I'm really not comfortable with that. But
Do you think that being in a new place now and kind of starting over is what has attributed to you thinking more about mortality? Because you've, for so long, we're really tapped into like the major cities, New York, LA. And now you're in Tennessee, and you kind of are realizing like how maybe your life felt big before, and now you're in this new place and you're like kind of starting over, and you realize like how quickly like things can change.
Yeah, well, I think it's a thing, and I hope that some people grew up close to what, some people grew up close. I work with someone who grew up in New York City, and they work on one of the magazines that I work with, and I love their work and I'm a big fan of them. So let me just say that first. And they grew up in Brooklyn, and they had a very classic New York, artistic parents. They grew up like in the lap of what we do, or what, and I think they're great. I'm just the number one fan of them. And I think there's this other group of people also that mix in with that are like from the outside of it, So again, like I love LA people making LA things is awesome. New York people making New York things is awesome. I do look at people that are from the outside that come with they're from Iowa, or they're from, Seattle, or they're from some place outside and they studied from the outside. I think your question is like, I think I spent so much time running to try to catch up to where I thought people already were. And I was so disconnected from myself that like when I heard, and again, I'm not like trying to preach Ram Dass or whatever, but something happened in the last like year and a half or whatever, where I heard all this Ram Dass stuff. And there's this thing Ram Dass is talking about, like nature and how we're all part of nature, how like, trees are nature, and like the animal, like deer running outside are nature. And like, that blew my mind. I realized in that moment, driving in my car, listening to that I related more to my car. I related more to my phone. I related more to getting in an elevator. I related more to getting on a treadmill. I related more to doing something like that than I related to a deer and being like, I'm like a deer. Like, if you shoot me and I die, you shoot a deer and die. Like, and again, I'm not like, I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is like, I think what happened was I like had this crazy awakening moment where I was like,
I was like, man, like everything I was doing to try to like run for my life and like make some kind of something out of my life, I like stopped and I was like, you're alive. Like that's it. Like that's the accomplishment, you know? And it probably sounds like super, you know, crazy, but I had done everything. I was on this wild search, you know, like go to every fashion week, go to PT, go to everything. It was, by the way, it's awesome. I love all of it. I'm not in any way, go to every award show, go to Saturday Night, go every dream that you could ever have, meet every person you could ever meet. I was on this like crazy journey to like find what made people happy, like hang out around the, you know, whatever, and like go to the end of the earth to like, you know, I haven't been to Dubai, but like go to like the farthest reaches that you can get to. And then I had this moment where I was just like, yo, you're alive. Like that's the accomplishment, you know, like, and so many of my friends have died and, you know, so many, I've just seen a lot, I guess. And I think I hit this place where I was just like, it also really killed jealousy for me because, you know, the last few years, seeing a handful of people leave, you know, like stop living, I just hit this place where I was like, man, like none of its accomplishment really means something different to me now, you know? And I think being here, and I still work, it's wild because I still work on like everything. It's just, I guess I'm less distracted, you know?
And it's interesting because, you know, when we talked before, you were talking about how in a way, I guess your mission was to kind of connect people. I mean, you kind of made it your mission. No one really gave you permission to do that. But I think the downside of that, right, is you are more connected to your phone and, you know, you're because of that mission you gave yourself, you put yourself in the center of things that were happening. So it's just now you've kind of in a way taken yourself, at least physically, out of the center of that. And you're kind of experiencing, you know, like this new way of living, I guess, maybe.
Yeah. And again, well, yeah, I don't remember what we were talking about. I'm sure it's all true because I just try to say the truth. But yeah, I still connect. Someone hit me the other day. A photographer hit me the other day and it was with a really well-known band that I don't work with. And they were like, do you know how to get a hold of this young artist, this like newer artist? And I was like, oh yeah, I know them. Like and I don't manage them. I don't work with them either. You know, I just know them. And it feels really good to like, you know, vet out what I kind of vetted out what was what the situation was. And then I reached out to the artist and I was like, you know, this seems kind of cool, you know, and then connected them. And it feels really good. It's not about me either because whatever they do, whatever happens, it'll be cool, I'm sure. And then I'll see it. And, you know, I think, yeah, I still get to do all that stuff. I think the being out, you know, here, I don't know, man. I really think that, you know, and the reason I keep none of this is premeditated, of course, but I really think that the Ram Dass thing, you know, when I stopped and it was like, when I realized that like trees happen naturally and streams happen naturally, and it was like, he goes through all this stuff and he's saying like these things happen naturally, and then it's like you happen naturally, like and it's like, what, like, whoa, like in that moment realizing like, yo, I didn't like choose to be born, and then I was, and then, you know, born into whatever I was born into, and then I don't know, returning to this state where I'm like, you know, searching more for like, what do I think about things naturally? How do I feel about things naturally? You know, and not not with the structure that I'm like participating in, but just naturally. How do you feel if you see someone win something, win this cool award? How does it make you feel? And it's like, I think if I'm participating with a structure or some kind of like confine, that's like got me as like feeling like I'm competing, or, I feel like, naturally my human, just as a person, I go, wow, like they're smiling and they're holding up a trophy or whatever that, theoretically you see someone win and you go like, wow, they win. You see someone laughing really hard at a joke with their friend and you're like, I wonder what they're laughing about, and it makes you smile, and that's a good version of us, and it's like, with me, I think I was like always looking at things a little bit more like, I don't know. I guess I was just looking at things like not like just a human approach. I was just looking at things like, I wonder what they did to win. How can I get there? How can I, everything felt like a bit of a hustle and a competition, I think, all in work and stuff like that. And connecting people to each other was always like, the thing that made me the happiest. So I still do that, I just being away from, places that, yeah, I think sometimes cities can do that to us, like, and I think there's a cool part of it too, by the way, when you're, some people I probably don't feel that way about, I'm listening to people talk, listen to a lot of podcasts, I think there's a lot of people out there that don't feel that way. Don't feel like they're trying to, figure out life. They just seem to be just like enjoying life. I don't know. I don't know if any of that makes any sense, but yeah.
Well, it seems like, finding or pursuing happiness is usually the baseline for people, as opposed to creating a environment for people other than yourself to thrive.
Well, yeah, that was the thing. Oh, that's an interesting thing, because throughout my life, a lot of my confusion, this is super open. I'm just being super open. A lot of my confusion was that I would be, whether I was DJing or whether I was doing something, and I would meet someone who was a better DJ than me. And I would go, I would be like, I would be talking to someone about DJing or doing whatever, and I would say, you should really talk to so-and-so. They're really good. They're better than me, And then I would be like, because I wasn't wrong. I was really, really right. I was like, I feel like that's an interesting thought, because I don't think I've ever really, I don't think I've ever really addressed that. But there was a time in my life where I was like, why is so-and-so getting here? And why is such and such happening for that? And it was like, because they're, I don't know. And I think, I don't know. It's an interesting, I don't know if I'm like super contradicting myself or whatever, but I think it was something that I was like wrestling with, was like, and it's really wild because I can't talk about life without talking about my brothers and my best friends. And they don't have that. They don't have a lot of the stuff that I have. Because I would say to my brother, I would be like, did you see so-and-so doing such and such? And he would be like, yeah, that's so awesome. Good for them. And I'd be like, yeah, like, but I wish I could do that. And he would say like, didn't you help get them that? Didn't you help with that? It's like an interesting thing. I don't know. I don't even know where to go with it, but yeah, it's interesting. And I think, I don't know. I think detaching is like super necessary to, I don't know, to maybe understand these things,
Yeah. One of the things my dad talked to me about a lot when I was growing up, he used to say to me, you know, you can have a poverty mindset or you can have an abundant mindset. And it really has nothing to do with your financial situation. It has everything to do with how you think about things. You know, so the poverty mindset would be there's only a certain amount of bands that can be around right now. And like no one else can have a hit except for me. You know, and the abundant mindset would be like, I can win and this other person can win. And there's kind of like room at the table for everybody. And I think that's super important, especially when you are pursuing something, because it's very easy to get into this mindset of like, you know, if why are they doing better, or, you know, but they haven't been doing it as long or whatever it is. And that's what's been cool about having these conversations for me is, you know, like Paula, who, you know, her conversation released, it's like she can do her own brand and it's totally different than Ray, but it's like we can both kind of uplift each other and we can both do great and we can both have successful businesses. You know, it doesn't really take away from each other that we're both existing.
Yeah, I think mine, well, that's a really great, the poverty and abundance mindset conversation only came into my life maybe like within the last 10 years. I don't know. I grew up super poor, like, and I grew up with that. My parents weren't saying that. My parents were saying very different. It was very different. It was very, very, very different. And it was like, I mean, it was poverty mindset because it was poverty. It was like living in serious real poverty. And then I went from there, in that poverty situation, into my own, you know, leaving home at 16 and then living, you know, kind of rough or whatever. And I think coming out of that and realizing that, like, you're right. In the poverty mindset, I think you're right. It has nothing to do with money because, like I said, like looking around and just being like, I'm alive. And I know that can sound goofy or whatever, but it's like, there's a lot of people that I know and a lot of people that I've been around and a lot of people that I watched, that are no longer here. And it's like abundance, I think for me, means something different today. You know, it's like, that's, you know, and I think, by the way, all this stuff goes into what we're doing. Like, it's like, I think intention now more than ever, it's wild with all the noise, you know, all the noise and all of the, you know, it's like, whatever, Back to the Future 2 or whatever that we're living in, you know, all the noise and all the memes and desensitization and all that stuff. I think that, like, this stuff is really, really showing through a philosophy and intention. And, like, I think that conversation happened, you know, that was never, I didn't know why I was doing what I was doing. I was trying to be good. And I'm also just a fan of people, you know? I think when I came to that place where I was like, I can't, why is this not happening for me? You know, like, I still don't feel it. The wild thing is that I was looking at the people that you had on to talk to on your podcast, and I was like, man, these people are successful. Like, why would Drew talk to me outside of, like, we're just friendly, you know? And it's like, it's interesting because I don't feel like, I don't know, I don't feel accomplished, you know? Because I don't think I ever did. I don't think I ever thought when I was thinking about it, looking at Daniel Johnston's paintings, right? So Daniel Johnston, you used to be able to go on his website before he passed. I saw him on tour, on his last tour. You used to be able to go on his website and just buy a painting for like $150 or something, you know? And then he passed, and I think about him a lot, you know? But he passed, and then you can't get a Daniel Johnston painting, really, you know? I mean, maybe, I don't know. I don't know anybody to get one, but you can go on eBay and they're like thousands of dollars now, you know? And it's like, I think about people that are making art and living a life and just doing the job to like pay for their life, you know? And it's like, I thought about that when I saw that your work this week. I was like, I wonder if you, and again, I'm not trying to ask this question to you because it's kind of personal, but there are different kinds of people out there where some people save one of everything they've ever made, and they really relish and they live and they really, you know, accept and enjoy their accolades and stuff. And I think it's good. And then there's other people that don't have anything. I don't have anything I've ever made, really. And I don't really remember most of what I've done until I like go and look for it, you know? And I don't know. I'm not saying anything about either relationship, but it's like, it's wild because I think that like, it's gotta be an interesting thing to feel like a winner, you know? I don't think I feel like, for the poverty mindset thing, like, I feel live in abundance, and I feel like I don't know, I feel like myself. I don't feel like a complete loser. I did for a long time, you know, but I don't feel like a complete loser. I definitely don't, but I don't feel like, I don't walk around, I don't really think about most of it, you know? I think about today, and like, I'm trying to shift that thinking of like survival mode, you know? And I think that's, you know, I think that's really amazing that your dad, you had that conversation so early, because you can feel it. You feel very like settled, you know, like you feel really like when you're super comforting to talk to in person, you know. It's like you have there's a sense about you, you know, and it's like, you know, it's interesting. But like I was looking at that. I think to call it a sweater is almost rude because it's like a creation, your work. And I was looking at that blue, and I was like, man, I wonder if he feels like he won, you know, like, because I feel like you are winning, you know.
Yeah, I think, and why you're probably experience, you know, your career, we can call it, the way you do, is that, you know, when you're in the middle of stuff and you're just grinding along and you're just trying to move it forward, it doesn't always feel like you're winning. You know, I mean, especially through Instagram, because Instagram is just like it's like a highlight reel, you know, because what you don't see on the Instagram is like, you know, like I'm dealing with like these patterns that are wrong and we're about to start production, and like we're, you know, like my fabric is, you know, damaged, and like, or, you know, whatever else. You kind of, on the day to day, you're just like in the grind of it, you know? So, but you just have to remember, like, as long as you're doing what you believe is right in the moment, that's all you can really focus on, you know? And I always try to think about the fact that, you know, my feelings are there to be a distraction, basically. My feelings are just the fears that I have in the moment. You know how it feels. You wake up in the middle of the night and you're just like, you know, your brain's going a million miles an hour and you're worried about all this stuff. And, you know, I mean, that's it's good to listen to those things, but at the same time, it's not a true reality. You know, it is if you focus on it too much, I think.
Yeah. I think, you know, yeah, I don't even, well, I think a big part of, you know, just, I don't know, like, I think also I have this, I have this tendency to want to go somewhere where there's no hierarchy yet. There's no hierarchy, right? You talk about any culture. You talk about any culture, and I don't mean this geographically or politically. I'm saying like any kind of creative culture, and you go into it, and you're like, oh, this kind of new art scene or this thing or that thing. And it's like when it starts, there's 200 people to 500 people involved in the room, like, people, and it doesn't, there's no real hierarchy in the impetus, because it's just like, it's not seen by the larger culture. And it's started most of the time, I believe, out of like love. So it's like, you go to these places and it's like, there's no one's been paid 50 grand to be the face of this culture for a brand, or there's no model of like judging what's a successful thing in this thing, like whether it's different, like house music, or like whether like voguing, or like all of these things that come out of a culture. There's no like biggest bestest in the beginning of it. There's no like that's the person from that thing. And it's like, and by the way, it happens in time. Like if you know about voguing and you know about like Willie Ninja, or you know about like EDM, or any, about these things, and you're like, well, that person becomes the face. It's like, it's deservedly. I'm not saying it's not deserved or whatever. I guess what I'm saying is like you read about Danceteria in New York City, or you read about all of these scenes, and then someone becomes like the face of it. But there's like 200, 300, 400, 500 people in the beginning of a culture explosion. And I'm always looking for that place, because I just like that period of time, like I like that. I like going into rooms where there's 200 people and you're like, yo, what is this? Like, this feels like it's going to be something. And I've kind of done that with my life, like over and over again. Or things that are undervalued really like make me super hyped, because things that are with recognized value, it's again, like, it's like meeting people and seeing the very beginning. I think we spoke about this, or maybe I dreamed it, but I think like you meet people and you're like, you meet a young person and you're like, whoa, you're going to be one of those ones, and it's like really cool. And I'm just always it's like tornado hunting or whatever it's called, like you're just going into these worlds. And I'm doing it here. Talk about it later, maybe in 2 years or something. But I'm doing it here with and I'm deep into, discovery. But that's really, I think, where happiness is for me. And then I can't. You're not going to be the one winning an award if you're like going to the ground. I don't want to say that word. You're going to the impetus of. You're going to the genesis of something, like, and then leaving. It's like, let me set up this party. Let me get out all the chairs. Let me set up let me set everything up. And then when it gets packed, you're like, okay, it looks like it's going good. And then you bounce,
Yeah. This is interesting, because like one thing I've wanted to ask you was, and your wife, Amy, just came out with a book. We talked about this a bit, but Negatives, which is,
we're alike. We're twins. She I hope she would listen to this, because I love her more than anyone else in the world. Like we're twins because we're the same way. We're like the same, like she's the same way. Like, I don't want to speak for her. You should definitely talk to her because she's super interesting. But like, we're the same exact person. Like, it's like, instead of sitting around and being like, I built this thing, now I'm going to sit on the highest seat and like everyone can like thank me. She just like bounces. She's just like, like looks, or here's the other thing. Sorry for interrupting you. I apologize. But I want people to know this, because my thing is that like, and I don't want to say anything like crazy, but like I wrestle with really dark stuff because you like and I think a lot of people that I admire do as well, because it's like you are part of this thing, you don't want to own it, right? So it's been said to me in my life, like, hey, if you want to own this thing, just when you get in there, take ownership. And I'm like, no, I don't want ownership. I'm just a steward, and I mean that wholeheartedly. I don't want to own anything. I don't want to own what styling means to the styling community. I don't want to own what DJing means. I don't want to own anything. I want to be a steward of like what this stuff is, So, but it's like you get into something and you're there with the first 200 people. And by the time it moves to a 5,000 cap, 5,000, it's changing. And the larger group of people is now deciding what's that, And you're like, no, guys, let's have a real conversation about what is the good version of this. And the masses are like, no, we just want this. We want this version of it. And so it's like you just bounce. You're like, I'm not going to argue with the masses in this room. I'm not, and I've seen it a time and again. Sorry, I'm getting a little elevated here, but like I've seen it time and again. Like if you sit with old skaters, is like older skaters, they're like, oh, like this isn't the real thing. You should really see this thing. And there's a big part of what they're saying that is not wrong. I'm sure if you sat with the Antwerp 7 or whatever, like I'm sure if you sit with anybody who's like one of the founders of anything, they'll put you on to like, whoa, this is crazy. But I think that there's a really important conversation to be had around canceling is a bad word, but I'm not here to tell anybody like something's not punk or something's not this or something's not that. It's like, because I just think it's skating, all of the things that we love, photography, video, like every piece of culture that we love, you hear people, this big dialogue of like, oh, that guy's copying this, he's not a real painter or whatever. And it's like, or this is like that. And it's like, I think that like the real search for me is like, I'll let you go back to talking about Amy, because I've meeting her and being around her is like saved my soul, because I'm like she knows the feeling, because you're at the impetus of something and you're like 3-5 years later, you're like, it's not what it was, and you're like, that's not what it was. It's like this. It's like candy that they say tastes like grape doesn't really taste like a grape. And you're like, I was there. I tasted the grape. I was there. I was a grape farmer or whatever. This isn't grape, And you're kind of bummed because you're like, I just want people to know what a real grape tastes like, But you can't fight that, And I'll say to Amy sometimes, because she's known me long enough, I'm like, yo, am I crazy? And she's like, no, you're not. I was there, And it's like such a I just hope that everybody can find a friend or a partner, whatever it looks like for them, that's like that. Because it's like, we're also not growing old and bitter. She loves that book. I think everyone should have a copy of it because it was done with love. It wasn't done with like, this is this and that's not that. We had that was 4 years. That was like a 4-year thing making that book. And it wasn't, no part of it was ever her rewriting history and removing someone. It was a dialogue with us. And that, I think, is the journey that we're on. Like, we're on together, But say the nice things you're going to say about her.
Oh, yeah. Well, we were just talking about like being somewhere at the start of something, and her book, Negatives, the photographic archive of emo from 96 to 06, it really captures the moment of like music that Amy was involved in, right? Because she had a record label where she had Dashboard Confessional and a few other people. But then you were also a part of it, with your brothers and Good Charlotte. And I told you I told you this before, but my first ever CD that I owned was Good Charlotte when I was like, I don't even know how old I was. Maybe I was like 10 or 11, but my dad took me to Best Buy and I got to pick one CD that was my own, and I picked a Good Charlotte one. But you know, it really was a moment. And did you feel like at the time you were in this like zeitgeist of music, or do you recognize it more now that you're kind of outside of that particular moment?
I don't recognize it for me at all. I from the very beginning, and like I said, like Benj and Joel are my best friends. They're some of the most creative people I think living. You know, I think, you know, people that know them would probably agree. People that don't would probably maybe scratch their heads because they don't really know them. You know, but I didn't think about it for myself at all. They were always the guys that they're a year younger than I am. And they were always the guys that, like, when we would get into a public place, I would say, like, do that thing you did. You know, they were really funny people. They're really great at massive execution. They're really great at communication. And they knew what they were doing. I think they knew what they were doing the whole time. They would probably say a little different, but I think they were pretty concise with their execution. I was just like, I mean, there were jackets or things that like were in videos, and like the Dapper Dan Fendi jacket that's in the Anthem video, I found in a thrift store. You know, there was things that like I'm not responsible at all for like anything that Benj and Joel did. They were just like kind of like I was like, check out this jacket, or like check out this, like, you know. And I don't take any credit for like, I think it's a thing that we should talk about, you know, like I don't look at, I think, let me just say this for a minute, like about zeitgeist or whatever. And like groups of people, you know, like I think Kendrick Lamar is really cool for wearing your clothes. When I see Kendrick Lamar wear your clothes, I'm like, man, Kendrick has good taste, right? Now, I don't know, like, there could be someone that's like, hey, check this out. Look at this thing I found, you know? I don't know that conversation, but whenever I see something like that, I'm like, somebody knows what's up, you know? And I think but I think Kendrick's smart, you know? I think his choices are really smart. I think Benj and Joel were that. I think, you know, they were making really good decisions. Like when they saw things, when they edited, they were never like, okay, what am I wearing? You know? And then I was like, you're wearing this. Like, to this day, our conversations, our companies, everything we do together, I'm like, hey, check out this band, you know, or like, check out this thing. And they, you know, but the things that they do with what I bring, are like, they're fully like, you know, I think I think it's where a lot of stuff gets confused, because there's always going to be someone communicating an idea, and there's always going to be a group of people like making ideas, you know, like, and I think like when I think of like what you do, right, and forgive me for like going back and forth, but for when I think about what you do, I'm like, man, there must be some good people that he works with, you know. Amy was doing her label at 17 years old with her best friend from high school. And her best friend from high school now has a record label and has her own PR company, and she's successful too. And so neither one of them made each other. They were two people that were going to be like, I think her best friend, who I love, it's like, you're talking about your best friends from like 16, 17 years old. The universe is so crazy, Drew, because the fact that these two women, these two young girls, were interested in the same thing and then banded together to work on this thing that Amy was doing is really cool. And then her friend, she now lives in San Francisco. She has her record label. She has her PR company. it's like, wow, that's pretty sick. Like the conversation for me is like, you know, at those impetuses, at that zeitgeist, look at like what was going on when I moved to New York, and then you see the fragmented people that came out of that scene. Every single person is like, Mike Nouveau now is doing this watch thing, and Dana Veraldi does this thing. It's like every single person that was in, like, not every single one, but like a good 24 people are like, and that's what I think is really exciting. You know, like Amy signed Chris. We know him today. We're all friends. But it's like, would Chris Carrabba, here's the conversation. Would Chris Carrabba and Dashboard have gotten huge and done its thing without Amy? Like, I mean, I think Benj and Joel would say the same thing. Like, without, they signed, you know, they signed with who they signed with. Like, I think it makes us better to realize that we are better together, you know? But like success or whatever that looks like, accomplishment together, and what you're saying about like, did I feel like part of a zeitgeist? Like, no, like, I think what I was paying attention to and what I did, what Benj and Joel and I were doing was like, is the same conversation that I think, you know, any group of like creative people have, you know? And I don't know. I don't feel like I didn't, it was like, I wasn't like making money from it, you know? Like when I found that Fendi jacket, which I have, it's like, I told my brother, we were going through his house one time and he was like, man, what do I do with all this stuff? And I was like, I'm taking it because it's going to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And this is like maybe 2006 or something. And my brother started laughing. He's like, dude, come on. And it was like, I was just like, there was no question in my mind. There was no question in my mind that he's going to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I just, it was never a question in my mind. And it doesn't, I was just very sure of like, you know, and I took the jacket because I was like, I'm holding on to it, you know. And I took a bunch of other things. I was like, this was in that video, this is in that video, but I didn't. I mean, there was no money. There was no like Complex Magazine's Best Dressed or whatever that looks like. There was no like, you know, when we did stuff for like the cover of Paper or whatever, like there was no like, I don't think there was any. I don't remember there was no like payday or whatever. Like it was like, do you want to style this or whatever? And it was like, sure. And I don't know. It was just a different thing back then, you know. I wanted to talk to you about the styling thing is really on my mind, and I want to talk about it like really carefully because I know that it's a thing that like I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't talk about it. But what I was doing back then, there was no such thing as like a stylist that we knew of. It was just like, check this out that I found, you know? And it's like, I think that's maybe why I don't feel like it's like, you know, what I do to this day, you know? I styled a music video this week from here. You know, like I went and found all the stuff over the last 2 months, and I have racks of clothes. And I keep, I don't know, 6 or 8 racks of clothes at all times. And I continually hunt. I think I bought 15 flannel shirts this week, probably all for like, you know, $3 or whatever. But, I like collect all nonstop. And then when I get a treatment or whatever, I just go to those 8 racks and then I go hunt down more. And I don't feel like a stylist. I didn't feel like it then either. I didn't feel like what I was doing. There was no thing where it was like, and also I think I'll end my diatribe, but like, I also think that like a big part of what I believe, and I don't know if I spoke about this last time, but I don't want to tell anybody who I'm styling because I want the artist to like I want the artist to have all the credit. Like I said about Kendrick, I don't know who Kendrick's stylist is. I'm sure they're awesome. But I think it's really cool that I don't know. I think it's really cool that I don't know who styles certain people, like especially the people. There's very few people that I think have good style. And I'd like to think that, like, you know, some of them have just good personal style, you know. And with Benj and Joel, I think they have great personal style. I think that they're super up to speed on things. And for us, it was just always a conversation. And I don't know, like, to this day, I don't see styling, or I don't see the conversation of fashion as like something to, like, knowing you and meeting you how I met you is kind of how I meet everybody. And I don't think it makes me cooler or someone to, like, have that information, you know? I think it's, I don't know. I don't think information is like something that, like, makes me better than anybody or something, you know?
Yeah. But I think what's interesting about, you know, just going back to like Amy's book and asking you about the zeitgeist, I think I really, you know, I was, you know, and I probably came to it late because I was only, you know, like I told you, I was probably only like literally 11 or something. But the moment it hit for me that it felt like, oh, this, like, that kind of emo, like alt rock moment of like the late 90s, early 2000s, the moment that it hit for me that this is like something that's going to live in eternity is when, and you and I talked about this, but when Lil Uzi Vert like spiked his hair like Benji and, like, you know, was wearing like the, you know, like the wide leg jeans with like the, you know, with like the chain and stuff. And you and I were messaging about this, but it was like, holy shit, that's, this moment like lives in eternity now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that doesn't always happen. Like subcultures the subcultures are always happening, but there's generally one or two that kind of capture a moment in time. And that's really special.
This is a good conversation. This is cool. I feel like we could do 12 episodes of a podcast around all this stuff. Here's the answer. Being referential is another kind of, maybe, my vocabulary kind of escapes me today, but being referential, I think, is another kind of, like, you get another kind of respect, you know? And you can see it if you look at Spotify, or if you look at record sales, right? Like, when we talk about Sonic Youth or something like that, you know, like, this is my respect for Sonic Youth. This is a good conversation. I love Sonic Youth. I like a lot of their music. I'm very sad that I'll never see them play again live. Maybe we will. I just want to put it out there. I would love to see Sonic Youth play live. I think they're very important. You know what's the coolest thing to me about Sonic Youth, and it's the coolest thing to me about Mac DeMarco, is that they are people that built that like, you know, they always say the first man through the wall is the bloodiest. I don't know. It's like the first person through something is not going to be the biggest, because for a lot of reasons, right? And maybe sometimes they are. I just don't, you know. But it's like what they did with taking Nirvana on tour, and they saw what was going to happen. They never shit on them. They were like, I don't know that it would have got, like, they really encouraged them to, like, be artistic and, like, and they really, I think you can see it the same way that REM was with Radiohead. And the same way that I see Mac and Idris, you know, like, firsthand, like, sitting with them, and it doesn't take anything away from Nirvana or Radiohead or Idris to say this, but it's like the person that they look up to, instead of, you know, they say, when your idols become your rivals, you know, like you see it in sports, like athletes, they'll be like, this was my favorite player, and then I'm now playing in games against them. Or people, it happens in music, it happens in creativity, when it's like, their idols become your rivals, or someone that inspired you. And I think it's so important to not have that happen. I think it's like to be the person that, like, maybe you did start the streetwear brand or did start this kind of movement, and then someone comes in and they're you know, and they're the biggest of the big, and it's like it's really, really nice and healthy to see the people that were the quote unquote like founders or whatever that looks like be like, look after those people, and I think it's what we've committed our life to.